Hello, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. I'm Chris Hall. I'm the head of marketing here at Charity Digital. It's Thursday, 1 o'clock, so it must mean that it's another Charity Digital webinar day. Welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining us on what is an incredibly beautiful Thursday afternoon. So it's an extra thank you for staying out the sun and coming to join us for a bit of a chin wag. I hope you're all well. As I've said, it's a beautiful day here. I hope you're enjoying the weather. Let us know where you're joining us from today in the chat, especially if it's from your garden. Incredibly jealous if you hear a bit of whirring in the background. It's because that's my fan. So I do apologize for that, but I'm going to have to keep myself cool as I'm chatting through this. Quick announcement before we dive into today's webinar. I wanted to let you all know that a couple of weeks ago, we had this really great virtual event called Be More Digital Marketing Day. In just about record speed and record time, we've turned the recordings around and they are now available on the site for you to go re-engage with and enjoy it at your own leisure. Share with your colleagues, take those learnings an extra step. If you're with us on the day, you can re-engage with those sessions that you enjoyed. Check out the ones you might have missed, or if you weren't able to make it, they're there for you now to go and have a look at. There was one particularly great one about why small charities need digital marketers, so would definitely push you in that direction to have a little look at. Obviously going to recap the house rules before we dig into today. Presentation is going to be about 35 to 45 minutes today, so we'll try and not overrun. Although those of you who joined us before do know we like a bit of a chit chat. They will have a Q&A after that. We want to leave plenty of time for you to ask all your questions and get them answered as well. If you want to submit a question, you can do so by hitting the Q&A button. It looks like two sort of speech bubbles overlapping. You hit that any time. Pop your question in and we'll get round to answering it at the end. Closed captions are also available should you need them. I believe for some people it's on the sort of bottom right, just a bit further along from the questions. Some others might have to click into more. It's usually listed in there as well. Recordings for this will be available within a week after, as well as the slide deck, and all the resources that we mentioned as well get captured, and they'll be available on the same page you signed up at after the event. Also, we want to really encourage people to use the chat. I've just realized I haven't got it open, so I'm going to do that. Sorry for sharing with everybody. You know, these webinars are, you know, as much about learning from us as it is about learning from each other. So make sure you take the time to share your thoughts, share your stories, share how you're feeling in the chat, especially if you've got something good to tell. We've been known before to lift stories from there and use them on other webinars or turn them into stories. So please feel free to share. And that's it. So I guess we better dig in. Let me figure out my screen here. So what we're here to talk about today? Well, we're here to talk about hybrid fundraising events. You know, charities have spent the past year shifting to virtual fundraising events. We've moved to this world of online auctions, Zoom pub quizzes. I know we've all done a few of them. Digital cooking lessons, even sort of gaming for goods become really prominent. And there's also been a host of others as well. These online events have really became a necessity as we've sort of navigated this new social distancing and, you know, more than one lockdown now. They've become more and more prominent. And that being said, it actually wasn't that long before charities started to notice the huge advantage that these virtual events could have. Thinking about it now, as we kind of move closer to life after lockdown, the sort of word that we're hearing surrounding these new general working patterns in fundraising events for context here is hybrid. Hybrid is the big word. And what we mean by that essentially is that charities will retain the advantages of the virtual world, but will likely include some aspects of the physical as well. For once, it sounds like we'll get to have our cake and eat it as well, kind of taking the best from both worlds and adopting the authenticity of in-person events with the simplicity and inclusivity of the virtual events as well. And if you don't believe me, we did a little bit of research as well, and Bizabo's Evolution of Events study actually reported that while 72% of organisers do plan on investing in hybrid this year, only 24% have actually started to invest in these experiences or think about them. And that kind of adds credence to the fact that just as organisers kind of had to reimagine virtual events in 2020, this year and beyond will kind of be a year of reimagining, how to combine these virtual and physical experiences together. And that's exactly what we're here to discuss today. Just that. And joining me is our incredible event manager here, Mimi Morrill. How are you doing, Mimi?
Hello, I'm good. I feel like we're getting too used to doing these now.
Yeah, other side of the fence now.
They're going to get sick of us.
I don't believe that. Champion. Well, all right then. I guess we better dig in. I accidentally highlighted my face there. So we're going to talk about 4 key things today. First of all, Mimi's going to kick us off with a look back at virtual events over the last year, and how we can take what we've learned from them to set us up from that transition to hybrid. We'll also be having a deeper look into what actually hybrid means, as it is a fairly new jargonistic term, for lack of a better phrase. And we'll be delving into some of the pros and cons of those as well, because it's important to learn those before we go any further, really. We'll then work through some pro tips from Mimi again, who should be sharing how we can create and set up these events and what you should pay attention to when you're looking to set up hybrid fundraising events. And lastly, although I haven't really seen many yet, we'll share some of what we think are good ideas for hybrid fundraising events. That's kind of based off, what was working physically and what we've seen work virtually over the last year. And we'll share a few tips for how you can make those happen. So I'm going to be quiet for a bit and hand over to Mimi.
Thank you. Yes, so I just kind of want to give you a quick overview of, we're all aware of virtual events now. Everyone has had to make a bit of a change to their everyday norm. So Chris, if you can change slides, I just want to give you a quick overview there. Obviously, we all do miss those in-person events. Nothing is going to kind of replace those, but virtual events have been a great substitute for that. We're all kind of still learning. We've had a good year and a half now to figure those out. And I think we can all say it has been a good experience. One of the other things that we've also found is user-generated content, also known as UGC, is such a powerful tool when it comes to events and fundraising. Obviously, we all know and love and adore Captain Tom, and he has been a figure, like many others, that has helped charities kind of spread their word and their message around when it comes to fundraising opportunities. In that similar vein, we've now known that donors love to make their own communities and build their own kind of virtual communities and bring that to the charity. Rather than kind of the charity having to create that for them and create the day and all of that. Donors are helping you do that. So I think it's good that we've been able to see that happen. Chris also mentioned this, what is next? And that is where the words new normal actually are turning into hybrid. We're seeing that everywhere. So you'll see that in your working life. You'll probably be in the office sometimes. You won't all be in the office. People are going to be working from home still. And we're also going to see that in our events and fundraising. So that is what we are here to talk about today. I now have some fun stats. Sasha has all of these resources, so we'll share those afterwards with you so you can have a look back at them. But it was really interesting looking into this. Obviously, from an event perspective myself, I found it great to kind of see how everyone's been getting on. Of course, about 50% of events had to stop or kind of go on pause when we went into lockdown. But those events that were able to turn virtual saw a 46% increase in their attendees, which is just incredible. We definitely saw that on our side, and we were having those conversations of how can you then go back to in person when you've reached these numbers. But it's amazing to see that that's happening elsewhere. We've also seen a 50% increase on social media engagement compared to the usual 16% in person. Now that I find really interesting and looked into it a bit more, and it's where people are kind of wanting to do that virtual business cards. They're connecting virtually, they're talking on Twitter, they're talking on socials during your session to spread the word so that they're kind of making their mark virtually as well, which is again helping you by having a hashtag or a dedicated Twitter account. It's helping kind of spread your own brand awareness. 86%, we've seen an increase in engagement. This is kind of what Chris was saying earlier with asking you to share your stories in the chat. Normally in an in-person event, you can't be sat having a conversation while the session's happening. But the beauty of virtual events is if something springs to mind as the conversation's happening, you can input into that, and that helps other people who are attending as well. So it's been great to see that happening. We've also seen an 86% have spent less money on events when they've gone virtual compared to in person. Now, that doesn't take into consideration the additional resourcing hours, which I'm very aware of are a lot. So I do appreciate that. But I do think it's interesting to see. You're laughing. Chris is laughing because he knows it's a lot. But it is really interesting to see that the actual financial implication towards these virtual events has dropped quite a bit. So it'll be nice to see how that continues with hybrid. As a result of all these amazing stats, 93% of organisers have planned to invest in virtual events in the future, which I think is incredible. We've had to adapt to this new normal, but actually we're going to not just leave it behind when we go back to in person. We're going to kind of continue adapting it, which is where hybrid comes in. Next slide, please. Thank you. So yes, onto my examples. So this is great. I have two really, really good examples here from two completely different charities working in completely different areas. So we have the Orchard Trust as our first example. They spoke at one of our previous events, Digital Fundraising Day, and they planned an event in just 4 weeks with a team of 3 people working part-time. They kind of went into it with the attitude of, why wouldn't we? Why not? Let's just give it a go. What could go wrong? Like, we might as well try. And I think that is such a good attitude to go into when you're first starting out with these virtual events, because as long as you're honest and you're open with your audience, you might as well give it a go. They went with a Facebook event, so there wasn't that initial high cost on the virtual platform, and it was a lot of user generated content that helped them kind of build their event. Their fundraising went through kind of raffles, pet shows, virtual barbecue, asking people to donate to be part of these things. With the whole why not attitude, they only had a target of £500 for this event because they weren't sure how it was going to go. But in actual fact, they raised £2,443, which is just insane, because their normal in-person events raise between £2,000 and £2,500. So if they're able to plan one of these virtual events in 4 weeks and hit that kind of target, it kind of opens up lots of opportunities for them. They did come away from the event with some learns, which is brilliant, because if you come away from an event without that, then something's gone wrong, because they're never perfect. What they realized was that they next time can be brave. They can go live. Not everything has to be pre-recorded. And they also didn't realize how much user-generated content they'd receive. So they didn't actually know what to do with it when they received it. And I think that's something that they plan into it a bit more, with that kind of building a digital community. Let your audience, let your donors do the work for you. And then we asked them if they'd do it again, and they said yes, definitely, and going to be combining events in the future, also known as going hybrid. So just brilliant stuff from them. So big shout out to Orchard Trust. On the other side of things, we've got an example from the Sick Children's Trust. So they are a large charity, and they were doing an online auction house. So this was their yearly event that they normally do in person. For this event, they partnered with Givergy, who helped them manage the side of the auction and the donations that way. And their event was led by the fundraising team, with strong communication with the marketing team internally. They realized quite early on that they had to be quite reactive, and they had to be quite realistic with what was actually feasible for them as a team and as an organization, and also how it would be received by their audience. So they thought a lot about that quite early on. A lot of internal meetings, a lot of communication went on with the team just to make sure that everyone was on the right page. And also, with things just changing all the time, they had to make sure they were current. So that's what they made sure they were doing. As a result of this, again, they absolutely smashed their target with £30,835 raised for the Sick Children's Trust, which is incredible. Their target for this was £20,000, because that is what they would normally receive from an in-person event. They also received 45% of their attendees were new supporters. So that kind of showed that they were able to branch out to an even wider audience because of the fact that it was virtual, which is incredible. They learned that timing is everything. As a team, they had other events happening at the same time. Going back to that resourcing hours, they realized that they were quite thin on the ground. So next time, well, for the next one, they're actually planning it earlier so that they can spread the resources a lot more. And then also continuing those internal communications and making sure that everyone is on the same page, and that the fundraising team are aware what the marketing team are talking about, and then vice versa. And they are also looking to do it again. They have their 40th anniversary in 2022. So I'm very excited to see what they're going to do there. Lovely. Okay, Chris, I'm handing back to you to talk about hybrid events a bit more.
Back to me. Thanks for that. Yeah, and two really good examples, I think, of of many. We had plenty to choose from, but two really good examples of how the fundraising event industry was kind of faced its most challenging period ever, but how two very different charities, when it comes to size and service, adapted to that and went beyond that, essentially, and were able to turn a negative into a positive, for lack of a better phrase. And I think what's clear to remember there is, while we might be returning to some sort of normality soon, it is quite clear that the effects of the pandemic will actually be with us for quite a while, and that's nothing to be scared of. As a result of that, event planners are going to have to pivot the way we run events again, which isn't, I think, the virtual side of things has given us that leg up, which is really good. The event industry has moved online. The need for in-person human interaction is still there and still prevails in some sense, and hybrid events will become a big part of how events are run, offering attendees, as we've said already, the best of both worlds. But what actually is a hybrid event? I think it's an important question to ask. Simply put, a hybrid event is any type of event that combines traditional in-person elements with virtual components. This means people can attend the same event either in person or online using virtual event software. The content is created and adapted to reach both the in-person attendees and the virtual ones equally over the same time frame. Now, Mimi will be covering how you can create hybrid events in just a more, but before that, sorry, I forgot to change slide. Before that, sorry, I want to share with you, why you should be doing them, essentially. So hybrid elements were already becoming popular in the event industry before the pandemic, but the pandemic has paved the way for hybrid events to become the business as usual, essentially, after social distancing protocols are relaxed. There's a couple of key reasons for this, and you'll start to pick up on the theme that's kind of come in between both these points. Firstly, hybrid events offer a really safe way to participate in events without having to attend in person. Since the pandemic started, people have become used to attending events virtually, and the convenience and safety of doing so will stick around post-pandemic. It'll take a lot of people quite a bit of time to get used to turning back up to in-person events. On the flip side, you'll also get people who want to access that more human element. So it's about balancing both sides of the coin, essentially. Secondly, hybrid events open events up to people who would otherwise be restricted by location. Effectively, you can attend from anywhere in the world if your audience is global, and this offers fundraising event organizers a really brand new opportunity to reach more people than you potentially ever have before, with the specific content that you have, without the need for geographic or sort of travel restrictions that you face within an in-person event. That bigger audience reach can really help you achieve more of your event goals and ultimately optimize the donations that you could potentially get from one event activation. On paper, hybrid events are the perfect compromise. They strike a balance, offering something for the guests who want that human interaction and the guests who seek the safety and convenience of a virtual attendance. But despite all those promises, there are pros and cons. And as a fundraising event planner, it's important to understand what these are. We'll start with the pros, always start with the good. As already mentioned, they are safer for in-person events. They are safer for in-person guests. In a COVID-19 world, hybrid events are considered safer than traditional in-person events. It's because they allow you to include all aspects of your original event plan without worrying about overcrowding. This makes it easier to implement things like 50% capacity, 2 meter social distancing, no handshakes, which we had to do at our last physical conference, all those sorts of stuff. Number two is they allow you to reach more guests. And as you'll see by our lovely tweet on the screen, which is actually from our last I believe was it from the conference? It was from the conference, yeah. Someone couldn't believe that they used to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to attend our conferences all the way down in London. Hybrid events allow you to really attract your local target audience in person, but also allow you to reach a much wider scope of people, or your much wider scope of audience by adding that virtual element as well. More reach, more people, more impact, more donations. It all kind of starts to stack up on each other. The third component of this, and I guess sort of the next one in line is, taking half of your event online means that you might be able to save a lot of money, as we mentioned previously. The money's technically usually saved on those variable costs that can change and that you might not always account for, such as attendee parking, refreshments, snacks, happy hours, and of course the cost of your event venue. The more people you have at these will move those costs higher and higher. By being able to put a limit on it, you can keep those costs low, again optimizing the amount of donations you're able to raise in that particular event. Depending on your event, hybrid events might help you reach more attendees without spending the same as you normally would, essentially. And that's a really, really big feather in the cap, I think, of the hybrid event. Last, certainly not least, as a pro, but rounding off our top 4 today is, this might not be everybody's kind of top pro on the list, but on most people's list, but it is a nice sort of Brucey bonus. Obviously, the fewer people, the fewer in-person guests that you have at an event, the less energy resources you need and the less waste you produce. Less people traveling, less food being consumed, all that sort of stuff. So that technically means that hybrid events are naturally more eco-friendly as well than traditional in-person events. And the virtual aspects of the hybrid events also make them a great option if you're looking to green up your events, which we all should be considering somewhat in this day and age. So let's take a look at the other side. So let's take a look at the risks. What are some of the risks of running hybrid events? So the first and foremost, I think it's something every one of us has had an issue with at some point this year, and that's potential issues with internet connection and connectivity. This can be a key problem with running hybrid events, is having to deal with poor internet connection. Poor connectivity can mean the virtual attendees don't get the full event experience. It could mean that you have issues with your donation portal, that sort of thing, and it could make overall engagement just really difficult. And it can even result in frustration and even having people log off, or you having to abandon the virtual side of the event completely. There are ways around this, though, like everything. I mean, we mitigate this risk, as Mimi will share with you. She's in the office today because her internet at home isn't so strong. I'm lucky to have quite a good internet connection, so I am from home today. But there are ways and means to get around that. When running if you want to run something virtual, you want to make sure you have a stable connection. We still, to this very day, haven't done webinars for the best part of 3 years now. We test our connection before every webinar. It's just adding in those specific plans and processes to make sure you test, iterate, and learn as you go. Mimi did also mention number 2 as well, which extra planning and organization resources. I don't really have a counter argument to this one. This one's kind of sticks on its own. Because a hybrid event combines aspects of the virtual and in-person events, it does leave more elements to plan, especially compared to planning a singular event type. Our fundraising event planners need to understand how to plan both types of events at the same time and kind of make everything happen together harmoniously. Not an easy skill, and it can definitely add pressure to the event planning process. What's important to remember is to plan a hybrid event well, you're essentially planning 2 versions of the same event. So make sure you allow your time to do that. Your planning time, you probably have to start a lot earlier. You might have to bring in some extra resource for that, but you do want to be very mindful of the fact it might take twice as long to plan. The third point of sort of a risk or a con is that if you do have a sponsor funded or a funded event, it could be a little bit more difficult to get sponsors on board. You've joined a lot of our sessions, or if you've joined a lot of our sessions or or events, you'll know we are quite heavily backed by sponsors, and we need to be to keep the lights on essentially. So we've had some of these issues going forward over the last year, but have found relatively new ways to get around them, which I'll share in just a bit. You know, they might be less receptive to getting involved with hybrid events. That's not necessarily true, but it's something to keep in mind as you sort of go through the planning process. The general concerns revolve around a lack of exposure compared with traditional in-person events. But a way to kind of mitigate that is to make sure you're really sharing and keeping them involved in the technology and marketing plans. Share that with them in advance and use that to convince funders to that the interaction and attendance will still, you know, get them the same exposure that you want. What it also allows you to be having this hybrid or virtual component is to be extra creative, right? You know, you can find the digital platforms that can best support that exposure that sponsors want, or you can have more interactive sessions or funder engagement at your physical event as well. So if you joined us for our conference back in 2020 now, the one we snuck in just before lockdown, we had this idea or concept of a village there, and this can transpire into all different types of fundraising events, where a particular sponsor was, we give them a big space that they could pull the audience in and show them more interactive elements of what they want to do. So it's all about being a little bit creative. The last one we should all be aware of, and if we're not, a little slap on the wrist, is cybersecurity risks. Obviously, the virtual element of hybrid events means we're much more susceptible to cybersecurity hacks and stability issues. You know, high quality, up-to-date operating platforms and software architecture is really needed in order to avoid risks around security. This can accrue additional costs and management, which might add to the overall event outgoings. But if you're familiar with our content, you'll know that you can actually start to learn a little bit more about cybersecurity, and you can also get access to discounted prices on antivirus software and much more that can all help you get started. You know, if you're familiar with our content, you'll probably know our stance on cybersecurity. We've seen a huge drop over the pandemic, which is worrying for the whole sector. You know, it's something we feel that every charity should be taken seriously and should be a mainstay in the digital strategy. So whether you're thinking just virtual events, or whether you're thinking hybrid events, or whether you're thinking digital working in general, you need to be considering your cybersecurity. Anyways, I'll hand back to Mimi.
Lovely. Okay, so throughout this next bit, I'm going to go through top tips of event plan, like for the fundraising event planners out there to think about. Chris very nicely said it earlier that when you're thinking of hybrid events, you do have to consider both the virtual and the physical, almost like it's one of the same. Both are just as important as each other. So throughout this bit, you might hear me say virtually and physically a lot. I do apologize if it's repetitive, but I just want to keep kind of drilling that home for myself and also for everyone listening. So on to the first one, we're going to talk about planning as number one. This is so important to start so early on. We saw with Orchard Trust, they were able to plan their virtual event within 4 weeks. We've also been able to do that with ours, but when you're looking at hybrid, you want to plan a lot earlier on. You also want to make that decision of digital first very early on in your planning. So if you are going to decide on hybrid, stick to it and kind of figure out your plans from that. That gives you time to research into the different options available to you, test everything, and also kind of iterate. So if you go back and go, actually, this isn't feasible, let's go down route B instead. It gives you that time to be able to do that. You're also looking for 2 venues in a way. You're looking for your physical venue where you're going to have that capacity of people going to be in-house experiencing the day. They're going to have lunch. They're going to be able to meet exhibitors. So you need the appropriate venue for that to cover the health and safety regulations there. But then also your virtual venue is just as important. So you need to keep that front of mind. How are you going to look after your virtual attendees? What's their journey going to be like? Of course, with all fundraising events, you need to figure out how you're going to solicit donations. So you want to consider this again, both virtually and physically, because it's going to be 2 different routes. Virtually, you're able to have that as a post live, have it kind of post it in the chat repeatedly throughout the day, kind of showing people how they can donate. Whereas physically, you can't kind of put that right in front of people unless you have like stands for donations and everything like that throughout the venue itself. So it's thinking of those routes. How are you going to kind of attract donors in both settings? Because you don't want to just focus on those virtual donors or just focus on the physical. You want donations from both sides. You've also got to try and figure out what are the benefits for people attending virtually versus attending physically. There's kind of different benefits to both. Obviously, we've said the free lunch, the happy hour, that's the physical draw in, but virtually it's the no 6 a.m. train, like Sally said earlier. It's kind of being able to accommodate for both of those for your audience, which moves quite nicely on to point 2, which is knowing your audience. So your user journey, it's no longer just one journey where they're going from A to B, where you need to give them a map of where the venue is or kind of a virtual route of how to get there. You want to accommodate for both. So you want to make sure that those people that are going to your physical event know how to get there, but also those people that are going to your virtual event don't have the panic of not knowing where to go. We've seen it with our attendees. And you understand it. Normally, when you're going to a physical event, you bump into someone in the street and say, do you know, am I going the right way to Olympia? Or is it down this way? Do you know where this street is? Virtually, you can't have that conversation. So you need to be giving them the right tools so that they know where to go. In this past year and a half, whether you've kind of held a webinar or you've had kind of a roundtable or a small kind of discussion on Facebook, anything, you've learned more about your virtual audience. So use that to your advantage. We know that our audience are very precious of their time, and they know where they want to be when they want to be there. So we want to make sure we're kind of communicating that to them, so we're not wasting their time, because time is so valuable at the moment. So thinking of kind of different things like that, and talking to your audience and telling them what they want to hear. If you don't know that information yet, then ask them. We say this, like sometimes you can pop a poll on Twitter, you can ask them on a Facebook group, you can post it out there and kind of find out more about them in the initial, again, the planning stages, because at the end of the day, they're going to be your donors. They're going to be the ones that are attending these events. Why would they want to attend? What can you give them? I saw this quote when I was doing my research, and again, we'll add it all into the resources, but hybrid is giving your audience a choice: attend in person or engage online. You are giving your audience a choice. You're accommodating for all by being able to go hybrid. Yes, there's going to be an additional cost because you are kind of running 2 events at the same time, but both are as valuable as each other. So you need to kind of identify them as 2 different audiences, but the same event. And that is tricky. And that's where you don't want too many cooks. So you don't want too many people planning the event, but you do need that one person that's going to take lead, but then be able to bounce ideas off a physical team and a virtual team. And when I say team, I don't mean loads of people, because we're a small, it's me and Zoe who work in the events team mostly. So I understand that resources are low, but it's having those conversations. I know that I can go to Chris and bounce an idea off with him. I can go to the rest of the team and do that. It's just putting it out there, because planning these events virtually is so hard. So keep talking. You then obviously want to ask yourself, how are you going to convert attendees into donors? So that goes back to where we were saying with your kind of knowing how you're going to solicit donations at both of these events, and then kind of figuring out how are you actually going to get them to donate. You've figured out how they're going to do it, but how are you going to get them to actually give money over, which is why they're there. Then we're moving on to the content. So when it comes to content, you have to be agile. Again, using that buzzword of digital first. The content that you produce at a physical event may not be suitable for those attending virtually. We all know that Zoom fatigue and FOMO are real. If you have the constant streaming of your event and someone sat at home watching it from their desk, they're going to get Zoom fatigue. And at the same time, if you have long breaks in the physical event for people to enjoy their fancy lunches that I really miss, those at home are going to get FOMO and why aren't I there? Why can't I experience that? So it's accommodating both and creating shared experiences. When it comes to knowing what's best for your audience and kind of tailoring that content, you have to think about kind of what are we still learning? So what still haven't we grasped virtually? And I know virtual networking is still we're still uneasy with that at the moment. I find it really difficult, and quite a lot of other people do. So let's not force that upon people. Let's create breaks for those at home. So again, they don't have that Zoom fatigue. They come back and they want to continue learning. So if you take them away from the screen for a bit, that allows them to take that time out and want more. You've then got those exhibition stands that Chris was saying earlier. Sponsors are kind of finding it harder when it comes to sponsoring virtually because they don't have that face-to-face interaction. But say you do have a sponsor at the physical event, and that sponsor also happens to have a YouTube video that you can use to promote during your breaks. That kind of kills two birds with one stone. Apologies, lack of a better phrase there, but it helps that kind of break for your attendees at home, and they still are learning about the sponsor. It'll be more brand awareness than direct contact, but it still kind of sows that seed in your attendees. You then want to think about making it engaging. So if we move on to the next slide, thanks, Chris. It's how can you incorporate your virtual audience into that live interaction? We did try this in one of our first events way back, where we used Slido, and it was on the screen so people could submit their questions from Slido. And that's quite a great tool because those at home can still submit questions using Slido, and your host can read those out, or you can have a poll that anyone can join. And it's making sure that you're not letting the people at home feel like they've been forgotten about. If they're trying to ask something, they're going to get frustrated if it's not coming across. They're just as involved as those people that are actually at the event. So this goes on to the next quick win of having a live agile host. You guys know Chris hosts quite a lot of our virtual events. It's because I know that I can chuck him in front of the camera, and if something goes wrong elsewhere, he'll keep things going for me while I'm figuring it out. And that's what you need. You need a host that knows your agenda back to front. And having a presenter physically there rather than a virtual presenter allows for that smooth interaction physically, which then can be transitioned virtually with the live streaming service. That then means that your live host can, like I said, read out questions from your virtual audience. I always think about it when it comes to an auction and you've got those people that join on the phone. They're still as important. They can still get the best question across. So submit their question, make sure you talk about it. Same with polls, same with any conversations, keep it interactive. Virtually, we've learned how to be in 10 places at once. Physically, you're not able to do that. And that's where you do need to kind of get the extra hands on board and have a dedicated virtual team. I also think that we need to remember and understand our limits. We're not all going to get this right straight away. And our audiences and everyone's audience have been very forgiving, but also, like I said earlier, their time is valuable. So don't try and challenge yourself too much. The first challenge is hybrid events. They're a challenge in themselves. We're still learning them. None of us have really been able to give them a go because we're still transitioning out of virtual and hoping we're going to be able to go physical. So just understand that. Don't give yourself too much straight away, and kind of learn what works for you with the little quick wins. And then finally, it's reminding people why they are there. So once you've decided to once you've decided how you're going to do your donation process, keep that as simple as possible throughout the day so that people don't forget. Keep reminding them why they're there. Gamification's great for that. Again, you can do that through an app. You can do that on socials. You can do that however is easiest for you. Announcements as well. So when you've got that live host, they can say, thank you so much. We've just received a donation from blah, blah. Like, we really appreciate it. That's going to go towards X. So then you're telling people what their donation means, depending on how much they've donated. You're reminding people how much they can donate. Any kind of donations helpful. So it's keeping kind of reminding them of that. It's simple, but very effective because you're making them feel guilty, which is exactly what we want to do. Right, now I'm going to hand back over to Chris, who's going to talk about some hybrid event ideas for you. He's just lost his screen share, so bear with me 1 second. But hopefully that does help you understand kind of where to start, and hopefully this will continue to know what to do next.
Because you were bigging us up, I managed to hit stop instead of mute. Instead of unmute. Typical. Thanks, Mimi. So what can we put these useful tips to use for, essentially, then? I mean, we haven't really seen many hybrid events or hybrid fundraising events come to fruition yet, but what we have done is put together a few ideas that we think are quite good, and might make sense as hybrid fundraising ideas going forward. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of food for thought and gets the creative juices flowing a little bit. I'll try it again. So first up, we have challenges. Peer-to-peer challenges empower fundraisers with their own donation pages and work well with really large scale event. Take the 2.6 challenge from last year that made use of the peer-to-peer funding by letting supporters set their own giving pages up, and then individuals or teams could then raise money for the challenge under the overall banner of one particular challenge. Charities provided support by providing fundraising ideas and downloadable packs to the digital fundraisers. And there are many other P2P challenges as well. When I say P2P, I mean peer-to-peer, sorry. We had the Ice Bucket Challenge, there's the 3 Peaks Challenge, there's the Mind Hike, or even such things like the Firefighter Charities Fire Family Challenge, which saw families lifting shopping bags and run on the spot for a particular charity. All of these can work really well under a hybrid model. For example, the 2.6 challenge can be done anytime, any place, by anyone, but you could add one or multiple physical components to encourage mass participation and really optimize donations. You could also do the same for the previous mentioned challenges, for example, the 3 Peaks, the Mind Hike. People could do this continuously all year round, but you could have one specific event that you encourage lots of people to come to. You could maybe do that multiple times a year. That it kind of leaves your opportunities kind of endless and gives you that sort of 365 24/7 opportunity for donors to donate to your specific charity through a specific challenge. Having more than one challenge can also heighten those opportunities as well. You don't have to live by just the one. Next up, we have sporting events, and very similarly to challenge events, they work quite similar. There's the one-off sporting events that we've seen and have kind of been around for years and years and years. We mentioned the 2.6 challenge, but these big one-off sporting events raise millions for charities. For example, Virgin Money said that it raised over 16 million last in 2020 through the virtual London Marathon. They had participants who mapped out their own routes and completed the 26 miles pretty much on their own most of the time. You can compare that to 2019 when Virgin Money reported that it had a record-breaking year of 66.4 million. On that logic, you could squeeze the two together in 2021, and hybrid events could almost increase donations by 25%, if not more. And I say if not more, is that what the virtual side of hybrid does is really break down those barriers to audience participation. I can't tell you how many times that I've been rejected from the Great North Run. And once, very thankfully, from Ride London. I wasn't very keen on riding 100 miles, but that was due to a limited amount of places. The idea of a hybrid event and adding the solo virtual component to things like the London Marathon, the Great North Run, Ride London, it allows your audience to compete anytime they want to if they can't make the physical event on the day. Leaves the opportunity for fundraising wide open and gives you the chance to maximize donations all year round almost off one single event. Next up, we have community events. So Mimi already went through what the Orchard trusted with their virtual summer fair and the success they saw through that. But there's still a lot to be said by replicating a lot of what they did hybrid model. So they could still host the physical events. They could sell tickets for both hybrid and virtual. They could sell their raffle tickets virtually as well. So people, their audience all over the place who can't make the virtual can still engage with a lot of the key engagements throughout the day. They could live stream their music or any other activities they've got, so people who paid for tickets can still access all the key sort of engagement points throughout the day. And similarly, while we're all kind of sick of the quizzes now, it's important to remember that we did love a pub quiz beforehand. And I thoroughly believe, I'll put my hat on it now, that they will make a return, and hybrid quiz events will be a thing and allow us to reach huge audiences and increase donations through ticket sales, prizes, that sort of thing. Who knows, we might have a mega quiz of all the Zoom quizzes put together. Similarly, in addition, music concerts, cooking classes, we've mentioned auctions already, all fall into that same boat as well. All can be expanded by a hybrid component. Live streaming allows you to reach a lot more people, maximize engagement, and encourage more donations. Music in particular is something that's proven to be a great opportunity, as concerts can be really easily live streamed, but they can also be live streamed to the likes of Tiltify, where additional audiences, people you've never reached before, can donate immediately using their specific donate button. So you can Tiltify, for those who don't know, is a lot like YouTube, but it's where people pay to watch live streams of certain things. So it's very popular in the gaming community, which we'll come on to in a minute, but it's also really popular with music. Last year, for example, the British Red Cross and Help Musicians partnered to create a live stream music event. And the Tiltify audiences were able to donate immediately using this new stickers donation button. The funds were actually matched by Tiltify at that time as well, and the event went on to raise over £12,000. So just a little bit of food for thought for what you can do with live streaming and physical events there. So as I mentioned, talking about Tiltify, next on our list is gaming. Gaming has become a huge £100 million industry and something that has grown in stature with regards to fundraising over the last year or so. And there's two main components that can easily make the shift to hybrid fundraising. First up is by live streaming gaming marathons. These are already popular in the sector, and we've been documented become players in a lot of detail previously. Marathons are the most common game-related fundraising activity, and simply put, it's a commitment to play for a continual period of time, and audiences can play on their own or as part of a team, and they can be united around a common cause. Really, really great way to interact with large groups of fundraisers like offices, communities, etc., and live stream to platforms like Tiltify and Twitch to maximize donations. Likewise, gaming tournaments are becoming more and more common, with winners of the games like FIFA and Fortnite, massive games at the minute. They are netting huge cash prizes and even more views. You can get your audience involved in a gaming competition with prizes for the top gamer. You can host the event in one location and invite gamers to join in there, but you can also have them join virtually and then stream the whole tournament through Twitch or Tiltify to reach as many people as possible, and have them involved in the fundraising through the donation capabilities of Twitch and Tiltify. Both marathons and tournaments can demand entry fees, which helps raise money from the bat. And with live stream platforms as well, you can also maximize donations, as I've said, by people pay to watch others play. That's what I was trying to say. A lot of pays there. Believe it or not, they do, and it's a very, very popular activity at the minute. So one that a lot of charities can maximize revenue from. Watch this space. I do think hybrid gaming will become a massive part of hybrid fundraising going forward. And last but not least is the sort of educational events, a lot like the types that we run. It might not be hugely relevant to a lot of you public facing charities, but to ones like us who like to speak to other charities or the general infrastructure charity, these are really relevant. In-person conferences, training, workshops, these can all be amplified in a hybrid setting. While you're able to host a physical event in one location, again, you can extend the reach of your event by allowing people to engage with content virtually through live streaming. Using one of Mimi's tips, talking to your audience, you can test price points out for both, and you can just as needed for both as well, depending on the different experiences. As Mimi said, there's a lot of you've got to consider both types. You've got to be digital first, consider all the virtual user journeys, how that donation route will plan through, how that ticket sale will route through, how the content will be delivered, and then you've got to do the same for physical. It takes extra time. It's something we've thought about in depth, and we've learned that a lot of people prefer not to travel, to go back to the tweet from earlier. At the same time, some people do, and some people like to network, other people don't. The sector is often accused of being London elite in that sense. What this hybrid model does is break down that barriers. You can reach anybody, anywhere, at a time that you find most convenient. And that's it. We're at the end, but we have, this webinar was just beginning to scratch the surface with hybrid, and we will be doing a lot more on hybrid fundraising events and general hybrid working in the future. So do keep checking the emails for those dropping. I believe we are already in the midst of planning a very specific case study around hybrid fundraising event for about a month, 6 weeks time. So keep your eyes peeled for that. But first of all, it is time for the Q&A. And looks like we've had quite a lot of questions.
Yeah, we've got some really interesting questions come in. So I will jump straight in. So the first one's from an anonymous attendee. Does anyone have any practical tips on setting up the event technically? We have lots of conversations on the number of cameras used, ensuring both the in-person and digital audience can hear what is going on. I think this is a great question because I feel like it's one of those things where you are going to probably have to get an external team to come in and be part of that. Quite a lot of the time I've found when you're looking at a venue, and I saw this for our events in March actually, because we recorded all our sessions from the conference in March. You have a team that's there to dedicated to record those sessions or kind of set up, and that's part of the AV team anyway, who produce the projector and the screen and everything like that. So they're part of the venue, and it's having conversations with them again quite early on, kind of giving them your ideas and saying, we would like to make this event hybrid. Can you assist us with that? How is it best to do that? We had captioning that was live streamed. So in order to get that, they literally live streamed the event to our people at home captioning. So that was in essence a hybrid event for them attending, but captioning for our event. That's how I've seen the best way to do it and have conversations with it, because I'm not a tech savvy person. I'm very much kind of working with the tools that I have available. And obviously, like you say, you do want to make sure that everyone is able to hear and know what is going on. So it's considering that kind of in your event budget.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one, especially if you're low budget. If you've only got one camera, you can only use one camera.
Yeah.
But what it's worth remembering here is making sure that the people, the speakers, if it's that type, are mic'd up properly. Test and make sure that the camera's recording, the angle's good. It's a good experience for those on the virtual side of it. I understand that there's different levels of things that can be done, but it's a case of we're all content creators now, and it's about just testing and learning, finding the right angle and the right avenue. Being in content, there's always an angle. From my point of view, there's always a way to get around these things. The way phones are these days, even a tripod in a phone can generally work.
Yeah.
And you can, if you can buy the right mic that can go with that. It really depends on your event, to be quite honest. But Mimi's right. If it is a specific venue, the AV team are always the best place to go. If it's not, just give it a whirl with what you've got.
Yeah.
You might have to invest in a microphone, but other than that, you can probably do it with a lot of things that you find around the office or the home office as it is nowadays.
One thing you also really want to do, because it would be an absolute nightmare if you realized after the event, is have someone at the receiving end that's part of your team. So they're almost watching it virtually as an attendee. Same way as we have Sasha with us today, kind of she's making sure that you can hear and see all of us perfectly. And if not, she'd jump in and tell us, because I can't hear myself virtually through the microphone, so I'm trusting that everything's okay, and it would just be such a shame if actually that wasn't coming through. So make sure you do test all of that. Lovely. Okay, we have another question from an anonymous attendee. Do you think hybrid is still excluding some people, older people or people without great internet, etc.?
I think that's a really good question, and I think the answer is yes. It will be, but I think it will. On the other side of that, I actually think it'll be the most inclusive events have been ever. So it's gradually a step in the right direction by offering both sides of things. People can choose to go to the in-person event, or they can choose to join the online event. We've never had that choice before, so I think that in itself is a step in the right direction. But have we solved a digital exclusion problem? No. And I think there's still a lot of work to be done there.
Yeah, I completely agree. Also, we have a comment here, and I really appreciate Eunice you picking this up. I think we've used a couple of acronyms throughout the session, and we do apologize, we should have explained those more. So FOMO is fear of missing out, UGC is user generated content. Gamification means essentially when you're creating a competition amongst those that are in attendance at your event. So whether that's through kind of being able to see, sometimes you do it so that if you've spoken with so many people at the event, you log how many people you've met with, so then you get 10 points per person. There's lots of different ways to do it, and then you have like a score chart and showing that off. It basically, it starts a bit of competitiveness and makes people want to network more, donate more, or kind of do more of a shout out. You can do that in a number of ways, through Twitter, like using the hashtag, and everything like that. So that is what that means. Thank you for asking. Another question here from anonymous attendee. What platforms have you seen that can take donations within that platform? So people watching virtually don't have to click elsewhere to donate and then receive the live feed from the in-person event.
Yeah, so I mentioned Twitch and Tiltify before, and they're really good for live streaming. I was just doing a quick Google search there because I can't recall. I do remember YouTube talking about it recently, but I haven't seen anything come to fruition out of those. I know Instagram has a donation button now as well, although I don't know if it's built. I think it does push away to something specific, but Twitch and Tiltify for sure do have the donation buttons.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. And we can have a look on that YouTube one and pop it in the resources if there is anything.
Just having a quick look.
Lovely. Question here from Lisa. So are there organizations that can assist with filming / streaming events like these if we don't necessarily have the skills or knowledge within the charity, particularly things like music events, concerts, and have people done this with volunteers donating skills? Do we need to invest in specific tech? I think this goes quite nicely with the question that the answer that we had earlier.
Yeah, really good question. And we do everything on a budget as well. We pay quite low price for our videos for a lot of scoping. There are charity specific videographers out there. It all depends on how far your budget can stretch, but they'll be willing to talk to you a little bit more. I would also scour some of the freelancer pools and volunteer pools out there to see if there are any. A really good one that we have made the most of previously, students. So students who are maybe master students are looking to graduate very soon, who are interested in getting a bit of experience, they're often quite good to talk to as well. They'll have a very good skill set. And they're often very knowledgeable, with the way they sort of film and degrees that are set up these days, and graphic design degrees, videography, that sort of thing. So they're quite an underutilized tool that will, that you'll always be able to pick them up for less cash than you would someone who's a professional, and they're always willing for experience. So in a nutshell, there's charity specific resources that we can share with you of the people that we use. If there's still too much, check out the freelance pools, check out the volunteer pools, and check out students.
Yeah, I've seen a lot on Facebook groups recently where people have literally put the question out there saying, are there any volunteers that can help with this? And it starts that conversation. They might not be a volunteer, but they might be able to recommend someone like Chris has there who is on that lower budget and can work with a smaller budget. So definitely worth reaching out. And yeah, we'll share all of ours.
To say Newcastle, Shy Ben's getting out.
So I've got a question here from Demi. When you host an event virtually, such as cooking classes, is it reducing inclusivity to not supply the ingredients for people at home? This is a worry of Demi's.
It's a tough one, isn't it?
It is.
I've done them on both ends before, where we've supplied meals before, we've supplied ingredients before, but I've also had to get the ingredients myself. I think it comes down to, is it reducing inclusivity? Potentially, but I think you can mitigate some of that by simplifying what you're cooking in some ways as well, and maybe simplifying the process on your end a little bit, and make it so it's not out there ingredients. Maybe it's something basic that everyone can get their hands on. You know, everybody loves fish and chips. And you can't go wrong with a good fish and chips cooked properly. So I think there's both, and I think it's more understanding your audience a little bit and gauging that internally. I think that, of course, there's inclusivity issues, but I think there's a modicum of fairness in that as well, and there's things we can do as organizations to mitigate that risk as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it is challenging, but it's good that you're kind of aware of it, because then you're thinking about it, which means you're going to come up with something to kind of move forward with it, and whether that is using store cupboard essentials or kind of providing almost researching a list and providing prices of all the products or something like that, so people know what they're getting into before they agree. We have time for one last question, and I think it's quite a good one to end on. One for you, Chris. Do you think we'll ever gradually get back to completely physical events?
No, I don't. Well, no, I don't think we'll get back to a time where every event's physical. I just don't. I think the convenience and inclusivity of virtual and the benefits of virtual outweigh the fact that the positives outweigh the negatives of virtual, I think. And I think it'll take us a while, but once we get hybrid right, I think that'll start to become the norm, just because, as the example with the marathon gave, you know, that was an additional 16 million it raised this year by people running alone, essentially,
Yeah,
are willing to do it. And I think that is the perfect example for me, that, you know, people are always going to be willing to do things on their own. You know, you maximize attendance. Virtual allows you to push that even further. I don't see why we'd want to in a few ways at the same time. I understand it, but I think we've got a model here with the sort of base camp of a model where when we get it right, it'll really amplify reach, and there'll be new learnings and new issues that come in between then. But I think there's been the charity sector, and, you know, charities, a lot of you out there today have done such a good job of making virtual events work. I think it would be a struggle to go back to fully physical.
yeah, I completely agree. I think the numbers that we've seen, you wouldn't almost be able to replicate that safely physically. So
Yeah.
you want to create an environment where you can still get that. And maybe that's actually doing a number of smaller virtual events and smaller physical events, or combining and going hybrid. It's kind of just keeping that in your fundraising plan of like, okay, we're going to do X amount virtually, X amount hybrid. Yeah, very interesting. Okay.
Good one to end on. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for your time today. Really appreciate you joining us. I know it's half term. I know the weather's hot. I bet it took every ounce of strength for you to join us today. So thank you very, very much. Thank you, Mimi, for helping me out and pulling this together. It was really, really great. Our next webinar is on how automation can make charity work more efficient. That's coming up in 2 weeks' time, same time, Thursday, 1 o'clock. So you can sign up for that now if you so wish. We also have our next virtual event coming up on the 8th of July. That is Be More Digital Strategy Day, where we'll be talking about all things digital strategy, how charities can create and implement strategies better, and we'll also talk a little bit about how we can prepare for hybrid working, among a ton of other things. But thank you very much once again for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks. Bye.